Hi you guys, it's Amy Gretchen. Welcome back to another tutorial on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be making this card. It's something that I made back in April, so it is very springtime, but it can easily be adapted to the fall. So let's get started and I'll show you how I made it. The first thing that I want to do is prep my card base. I have a half a sheet of 8.5 by 11. This is Basil White Orange Peel cardstock. It has this beautiful texture to it. I really wanted to add a little bit of texture to this card to give it a little bit more dimension. So now I'm going to score it down at the 4 1/4 mark. And once that's done, I'm just going to set that aside for now until I need it in the future. The next thing that I want to do is choose my pattern papers. Now this is where you can get very fall or winter or whatever season you're looking for based on the colors that you choose. I'm using this great pad by Echo Park and I've chosen 5 colors to use. Then I've got this great die from Simon Says Stamp. I absolutely love this little feather die. It's just called Feathers, and I will have that product information in the description below. So now I'm going to be die cutting that onto my pattern paper. I want to maximize my space because I'm going to be making multiple cards, and so I want to get that as close to the other cuts as possible. And then I'm just going to secure it down with some tape, and then I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. That tape makes sure that it does not move around when I'm putting it through the machine. Once I have all those pieces die cut, I'm just going to shift through and pick out the patterns that I'm going to use for the one card. And then I want to add a little bit of texture to each feather. What I'm doing is I'm curling in on the ends, being careful not to crease down the middle, just so they will stick out a little bit once I sew this down. I'm going to continue with this process until I get all of the feathers done, and then I'm going to pull over the card base that I made earlier, and I'm going to use the guides on my mat, the rulers, to help me as I place down the feathers so that I make sure that they are centered. And once I'm happy with it, I'm going to grab my adhesive. This is Tombow Mono adhesive. And I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive to the spine, not much, so that I can secure those feathers down. That way, when I bring it over to the sewing machine, they're not flying around and causing me a lot of problems. So I'm just putting a tad just right there in the middle, and it does the trick. So once I'm finished with that, I'm going to take it off camera to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew all of those pieces down. Now that the pieces are sewn down, you can see that I've got all of these threads sticking out. I was debating whether or not to keep the threads out for a messy look, but ultimately I wanted it to be more clean, so I decided to pull the threads through. And the easiest thing to do is to turn it around, and when you do that, you can see that if you pull on the thread, you can see that there's a little loop, and if you pull through the loop, then you can pull that thread easily through. And just be careful to do it softly so that you don't rip any of your paper. So I'm just going to continue that until I get finished with it. And then I'm just going to use regular old Scotch tape to tape down this card. I was trying to decide how I wanted to hide this back because this is a 1-layer card, so this isn't a panel that I'm going to be gluing on. So when you open the card, you would see all these threads in this tape, and I don't want the recipient of this card to see that. So what I ended up doing is I cut a smaller piece of cardstock and just put it right there on the back so that I can hide all of that mess that I made in the back. The next thing I want to decide on is my sentiment. I am pulling out a few thank you sentiments that I've had for a really long time. I want something small, and I'm thinking that maybe I would put it onto a tag and maybe attach it to one of the feathers. But ultimately, what I decided to do was just put it there down on the bottom. Often what I will do is I will stamp it off on a piece of paper and set it there so I can see if I actually like the way it looks, if I like the placement, or if I want to put it somewhere else, maybe centered or up at the top. So that's a little trick that I do to just kind of help me figure out what I want to do. And because these are wood mounted stamps and I don't necessarily trust myself when it comes to stamping straight, especially when you can't see behind the wood mounted stamp, I'm using this old tool called the Stamp-A-Jig, and it's perfect to help you get the right placement every time. And what I'm going to do first is stamp it onto the plastic using the purple guide, and then I'm going to put that plastic onto my project and put the placement exactly where I want it to go, put the guide back on there, and then go ahead, ink my stamp, and then stamp it, and I'm going to get perfect results every time. The last step is to fold up the card, and then I'm finished. That is the card for today. I hope you guys will give this a try, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. Also, don't forget to give this a thumbs up. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.